I'm Kendall Ratliff. I believe that you can change your life by trying one thing at a time. You can learn more at my website, tryonething.co, or by tuning in to the Help NSFW podcast.
And I'm Johnny Fairplay, reality TV, survivor. And throughout my adventures, I've met a lot of interesting and motivating characters.
Johnny and I made this podcast because we want you to unlock your full fucking potential. So whether you want to get a little more badass or a lot more badass, strap in. Join us here each week. It's Help NSFW.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing excellent. How are you guys?
Pretty good.
Great. Welcome back to reality or to Help NSFW. Oh, old habits die hard. We have the pleasure, myself, Johnny Fairplay, always joined by Kendall Ratliff, of being joined this week by Sarah Rice. I know you guys know her from The Challenge, The Real World, all things awesome in the culture that is MTV. But I saw an Insta post a little ways back, and I was like, holy moly. I've heard this question asked so many times, even internally myself, just like, when are you going back on The Challenge? Are you going to get revenge? Are you upset about Johnny Bananas? And your answer was the coolest thing that I had seen on the internet that week. And I was like, holy moly, we need Sarah Rice at Help NSFW.
Thank you.
Yeah, can you
Thanks so
summarize what that answer was?
Well, I mean, you could be referring to the one where I was just like, what is the TikTok that? Oh, we do not care.
Yeah.
Bye. Like, I was like, I don't care about this. And you know, I felt like I needed to address the people, the fans, and the people who are messaging me daily and have not stopped. You know, I get messages about this or get tagged in something related to what happened in my last season of The Challenge daily.
I can imagine.
And I'm like, oh man, I think people don't know that I don't give a fuck. And so I gotta let the people know that we're good. It's been 5 years. I know that like TV lives in this like time capsule where now with, you know, all the streaming services that have come out, a lot of these people are just now discovering or finding out what happened. And so it's very fresh for them. It is not so fresh for me. And, you know, and people also really only know me through how they've interacted with me on the show or by watching the show. And so they have a very narrow view of who I am as a human, who anybody who's been on reality television is as a person. We only experience them through the lens of how they were represented on television or how they've been received by the viewers.
Yeah, I can tell you that a lot of the extra attention it has come by way of the quarantine. Like Lex Lindenberg, a Survivor All-Star. You know, I have him on, you know, my Mount Rushmore of survivors. You know, Lex was, you know, he goes, hey, like, you know, I know that Survivor's not back for, you know, for a year, you know, maybe more, you know, do you have any suggestions? I'm just like, you ever watch The Challenge? And he was like, no. So he watched Fresh Meat, or not? Was it not Fresh Meat? This last the last new one. But anyway,
it's not on that one.
Yeah. So anyway, so he watched. He was just like, I love this. I hate Fessy, but I love the show. Is there more? I'm like, there's lots more. So I was like, here's my Paramount Plus login. Check it out. And him and his wife, they've just been junkies. I mean, they're you know, just imbibing. And he keeps kind of just like, really hate this Bananas guy. And I was just like, oh, have you seen so-and-so season? He was like, no. I was like, oh, just wait. Anyway, and you know, I saw your post on Instagram. I immediately tagged, like, I'm just like, look, she's awesome. I told you she's awesome. She's even like 5 years later, like exponentially that much more awesome.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Well, I will say that something that contributes, thank you so much, and something that contributes to that awesomeness is that now I'm like I'm doing what I want to do. So I think it's, you know, we really, I don't know. I think that it's easy to see that I am like in a good place and really happy and able to do the things now that were always my goals in life. And I was in more of a transitional place, or in like, I was like in my 20s. I'm like working towards the goals when people saw me on television. So it's like, oh my gosh, look at her. She's like a grown-up person. Well, yeah, I certainly hope after, I would become that, and transition into being like a normal human and not just because that was never my goal, or never something that, both my parents were in the film industry, and I did not want to be in the film industry. I was like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to be that. I just did it for fun. And I had other plans. I don't want to say bigger plans, because whatever anybody's goal is, that's their goal. If you want to be a lifer on reality television, then you do you. I am not here to judge. I'm just saying, for me personally, that there were other things that I was passionate about.
So what are those things? What have you been up to in 5 years, if not making
to now?
From 5 years now.
Tell us.
So a lot of people ask, like, what? How come you never went back? Well, I took some of the money, because I did win a couple times on the show, and I used that money, and I went to grad school, and I got my master's in marriage and family therapy. So I'm a psychotherapist, and that's marriage and people are like, oh, why just marriage and family? Well, it's just a generic term in California. That's what they call therapist in marriage family therapy. So yeah, I'm a therapist now, and I work in private practice, and I have a full client load. I like full caseload, and it keeps me really busy, and it's like a regular old job. And then, while I'm in between time, I also host a podcast with, my co-host is somebody that I met on the challenge as well. My first season was her last season, and we just clicked, and we were instant friends, and we connected on being, kind of like the smart nerdy girls on the show. And we've been doing our own podcast, the Brain Candy podcast, for now we have 538 episodes. So
I was about to say, are you like 5 years deep?
Yeah, we're as long as I've been off. I mean, I'm like, I'm going to do my own thing now, and talk about. I really wanted to talk about reality television in an honest way, in a different way than how they were talking about it when I was on MTV, or when it was being produced by somebody who maybe had different intentions than we did.
Yeah.
So you also talked about, one of the reasons that you number one, you're content in life, but number two, one of the reasons that you wouldn't take up and leave and go do another challenge out of the blue is, I mean, when we leave for these shows, you're looking at like a week of press, in 2020, you were looking at 14 days of quarantine, and then the 2-month film schedule, that's 3 months away from your clients who, if you're seeing a therapist, it's just like, hey, I'll be back in 3 months. That's not going to work for most of your clients.
Not only would it not work, I would lose my license. That is considered client abandonment, and we can't do that. That is not allowed by. I can't ethically or legally or morally just say like, peace out. I laugh because I even when I explain why, even when I'm like, look, and I'm good. Also, it would be a pay cut for me at this point. People think that they like pay you a whole bunch. They don't really. If you look at like that, you're paid weekly, but then it's not really, you're not really just there, like you said, for the time that you're filming. There's the press afterwards. You're under contract for about a year, so you can't really do anything else that could make you more money or
exponentially more money.
Right. So you're like shut down. You're under their control. And I'm not willing to give away a year of my salary or like be under somebody else's control, it just makes me laugh, because even saying all that, I think I'm doing like a good job explaining why and giving all of the bullet points and reasons. People are like, well, can't you just take your 2 weeks vacation and go to the All-Stars? I'm like, that's okay, come on, guys. Like, you would like me to take the 2 weeks, like, and to be perfectly honest, I'm terrible at taking my time off. I have not had a week off or given myself a week since I started working as a therapist. I'm taking my first vacation next week, and I'm so excited about it. It's
Good job.
Finally, a little bit of self-care, right? I'm like, So even with that, I'm like, I'm not going to use my vacation time to go on a challenge, which is not stress-free or self-care whatsoever.
No.
I mean, or otherwise.
Even All-Stars, like, Trishelle went on All-Stars. She's just like, I want to sit by the pool. I want to drink. I want, pinata, like pin the tail on the donkey would be a good challenge elimination game.
Right.
And then she just like, this is the fucking challenge.
Right. I don't want to do any, and I'm just like, I don't want to be uncomfortable if I don't have to, and it's not my choice, and I'm like outdoorsy enough and go like my week off, I'm going backpacking, like, and
way more relaxed,
like no shelter and like in the middle of nowhere kind of thing. Like, so I'm doing challengey stuff without
so it sounds like you sign up for Survivor. Let's just go ahead and tell everybody now you're on the next season.
Yeah, right. Don't sound like that. Oh, yeah.
So no, as I said, hearing you, like you had I don't want to call it an end game because I mean, you're still young at life and still so much more, on the plate. But I mean, but going, in your 20s, you're just like, hey, here's a target. I'm aiming towards this target. I hit this target. And as a result, I can do good, positive things for the world around you. Being on the, I mean, like, I love watching you on the challenge. I think you're an amazing person. But I mean, I don't think you're doing as much good by going on a game show or in your real life.
I can't. And it doesn't, it is a wonderful symptom or cause of what I love to do, that it happens to be good for other people.
Right.
I love what I do as a therapist. And the wonderful thing that comes from that is people are helped and people are, feeling better and, everybody's in a better place. But for my own well-being, for my own sanity, I want to be doing something that makes me, that like feeds my soul and feeds my passions and allows me to be, just allows me to let my strengths shine. And although I can let some of those shine on the challenge, it feels like it's for different reasons. And it's, I just want to be able to help people in a therapeutic environment, and it feeds my soul. And being on the challenge doesn't feed my soul. At one point it did. At one point there were like and I think people have a really difficult time understanding that two things can coexist. Two things can be true. I could have had a great time, did have a great time on the challenge, meet wonderful people. I mean, my best friends are from there, and make wonderful memories, doing really cool things that I feel so lucky and so grateful for doing. And I can also call out some things that were not so great, that were kind of toxic, not kind of, really, and recognize that it's something that's not healthy for me to be in at this time in my life. So those two things exist at the same time.
That push-pull of being able to see the positive and negative, I bet that really helps in couples counseling.
Yes.
It's like usually nothing is all good or all bad, and it's usually not all one person's fault.
Always. What's good or what's bad? Those are like things that we've just invented anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been when I was married, shockingly it didn't work out. I was looking for a therapist that that weighed more my way. I didn't find that. I think it would have been well, it for me
extra for that, Johnny.
Yeah, I know. I'd I'd leave the 100 and they're like, "Oh, you dropped this." I'm like, "No, I didn't."
We're not easily
well, even they said they would take it, but it wouldn't help me.
Right.
Give
I'm
it
still
back.
going to give you therapy.
Yeah,
right.
So I would,
because that's what you need anyway. That's what it's like. I always say there's a difference between like friend advice and therapist advice. So like when my friends will come to me and they'll ask for, can I help? I'm like, do you want to talk to Sarah the therapist or Sarah the friend? Because Sarah the friend is going to be like, yeah, dump his ass. He's the worst. Sarah the therapist is going to be like, well, let's look at what role you played in this situation. Ooh. And those are two different answers. And people are like, no, I'll take friend Sarah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, friend Sarah sounds much better.
Yeah, yeah. That's why. Yeah, exactly. That's why conflict of interest is a thing, and why I won't work with anybody who's my friend, but I will work with anybody who's been on reality television and people who are on my own show, because that is absolutely fine for me to do. I've consulted with different, boards on whether that's okay or not. And it's the same as like a therapist treating another therapist, somebody who's been in the military treating somebody else who's also served in the military. We've just had a shared experience. That's it. And as long as the clients are okay with it, it's not, you know, sometimes I get that question of, is it a conflict of interest to treat people who've also been on the show?
Yeah.
That's something I definitely want to talk to you about. So like, I remember, I believe, was it Ronda Rousey? I think it was like Ronda Rousey's first big loss in the UFC, and she talked about her internal battle with suicide. You know, because she considers herself, you know, like a perfect, you know, fighter, you know, a perfect specimen, you know, and had the mentality of a Michael Jordan. Like, and they're just a different breed of person.
Right.
So there's just this tunnel vision that's unmatched, and you know, and you know, I was talking to the people at Busted Open Radio. You know, it's an MMA talk show, and I was just like, hey, I'm like, you know, when you have these alpha males, they can't see anything different. You know, I can tell you on certain seasons of Survivor, more than one, there have been people that once eliminated from the game, suicide was right there in their forefront. And these people, you know, and we have Dr. Liza there, and she's a great asset on the island. And she, you know, and I believe she lives in Los Angeles. And I think, you know, throughout the years, my first season of Survivor was 2003. I think throughout the years, the communication is made better by way of Zoom and stuff like this. But, you know, I can tell you in 2003, it wasn't.
Right.
And there were lots of survivors that, you know, that went into the game, you know, with this alpha personality that was just like, you know, it's win or nothing. They leave, dreams destroyed, and never the same person again, and not getting the help. I mean, you know, I think that the channels were there if you wanted to pursue more, but you know, but a lot of them, you know, they're just internally they've made their own decision that they're not going to seek out this help.
Right. Well, and I will say, you know, when I was in grad school, I did my research on the effects of reality television on participants. Wow. There's only, and when I was in school, so this was now 4 years ago when I did this project and the research for this, there was only one other study that has ever been a published study about this. It was published in the, it was for media law. So it wasn't about psychology, or it was about the ethics, illegal, like ethics of reality television. And it was a study done in Sweden where they looked at reality shows, the effects of people who have been on there, and they deemed it unethical. So they were like, this is not even ethical for us to do. I mean, we're sort of putting them through this like quote unquote experiment, but we're not following the procedures and the proper protocol of what is included in an experiment. And one of the big features of that is debriefing. So anybody who participates in any study goes through a debriefing process or has the opportunity to have what just happened explained to them in a way, provided support, all of the things that could happen, you know, and of course the contracts say, you know, there could be mental health issues and things like that, but people don't really grasp just what it's going to be like afterwards and how things are going to be different. And I'm like 99% sure. I almost like reached in and like pulled out the paper and find out like so I get the numbers right. But one of the things that I wrote about and studied was the suicide rates are 4 times the general population.
Oh wow! Sure.
So this is, you know, again, the golden rule: correlation is not causation. So it doesn't mean necessarily that it's the challenge or the reality show that caused them to do that.
Right.
But it could have lowered the threshold for that. It could have brought up things that, you know, people weren't ready to address. And in the aftercare, even though those avenues are often available, you know, I tried to reach out because, you know, whenever we go on a show, they have us talk to a psychiatrist, and a psychiatrist is very different than a therapist. They're 2 different things. They do not do the same thing. And, you know, they give us the MMPI, which is to, you know, find out that there aren't any major personality disorders or things like that could be underlying. But that, in my opinion, feels like it's more to protect the production company and them. If anything were to go wrong, to say, look, we tested them for this and we didn't see anything that was a red flag. But it's not to protect the participant.
Yeah.
It's not to make sure that we're okay. That test does nothing to assess for anxiety, depression. Like it doesn't.
Wow.
And afterwards, when I reached out to that same psychiatrist and said, you know, like, this is hard, you know, can I get some support?
Yeah.
And he is like, I don't really do that. And, you know, I could send you some referrals, and I kind of felt like, you know, don't bother, I'll look on my own.
Right.
And a big thing, you know, when I went to my own therapist and I talked to her and I tried to talk to her about it, I felt like I wasted an entire session explaining what the challenge, what reality show is.
Right.
And I'm like, that was a waste of money because I'm explaining to the 65-year-old woman what the fucking a reality show is, which is dumb. And she's like, oh, I haven't seen that. I know, because you're a little bit out of our demographic, lady. So
she's in mine.
right, she was wonderful. She's lovely, amazing. But I was like, oh, God, I can't believe I'm wasting my time explaining this. So I was just like, forget it. I won't even bother talking about this. And then I've heard another story from somebody who was on the challenge years ago, who went to therapy and tried to explain the situation, tried to explain to them and was like, yeah, okay, so I did this show. And, you know, we were followed by cameras 24/7 and, you know, we did crazy stuff. And I'm not kidding. This is the therapist's response. The therapist leaned in and goes, do you see the cameras right now?
Oh.
Like she's hallucinating it or like making it up. And this is the kind of thing that people may experience of a not being fully understood, not recognizing what goes on in there. So I'm really trying to do everything I can to grow as a therapist and specialize in the you know, areas that I need to specialize in to be able to help reality stars transition back into being a regular old person. And so that is the thing that I have become so passionate about doing and making sure that I you know, I've developed a treatment plan for working with people who have been on reality shows. And, you know, I hope that there are other therapists out there who are doing this because I see it as so important. And I really would like to push for and speak out as much as I can for this becoming a normalized part of the reality show process where it's mandatory that you go to between 5 to 10 debriefing therapy sessions.
It should be
8 to 10, really, because I think the real magic number is 16, but I'll take what I can get. I should just aim high and then, you know,
and then
20 sessions.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, I think that there needs to be an option, and I think this should be covered by the production company. It seems crazy to me that we have a legal person there to make sure they're following all the rules of the game. We have a medical person there just in case anything physically goes wrong. But there is no one to say, you know what I'm really seeing? Some self-harm, signs of self-harm. Can we check on what she's doing when she's going to the bathroom? You know, what I'm really seeing are some of the language around like addiction. And I'm really seeing some dangerous addiction behaviors here. And I think this person may need a treatment program after this. And I think it's irresponsible. And I think it's only a matter of time before there's a wrongful death suit or before something. And things have already happened where shows have stopped production or they've not been able to air a season because things have gone wrong. And if there were a mental health professional on set, on call, who's able to view the tapes, look, I'm all about making your reality shows. Yep, make it fun, make it exciting. I love the drama. It's all good and wonderful. But can we do it with a net? The same way that we do it with medical and legal.
Right.
Kendall, you wouldn't like on Survivor's like the good guy of I mean, like, you know, I love the challenge, but it's just like, you know, it's a little dirtier. And I think that's why I kind of like it more. Don't tell Survivor. I can't do it. You guys are much too physical, but otherwise. So, but on like Rupert, America's favorite survivor ever, you know, the big, the happy hippie with the tie dye and the beard. So when I vote out Rupert on Pearl Islands, in the middle of the night, he goes to my buddy Rhino. Like I'm still playing the game. In the middle of the night, he puts his hand over his face. He goes, I found a boat and a machete. Let's go to the island and cut off Johnny's arms and legs. And Rhino's like, cool. Like, give me 1 second. And Rhino is like, Dr. Liza, Dr. Liza, Dr. Liza.
This is not good. Right.
I mean, and this
Mhm.
is America's favorites. The most loving survivor of all time had plans to cut off my arms and legs because of a fucking game show.
Right. And there's so much, when they, and I was thinking about this, even when, like on a show like yours, they can't take into account what people do or how people are going to act when they're put in those extreme situations that
Yeah, we're
take us to
starving.
emotional.
Yeah.
Right. You add starving in. I mean, that is a whole other, animal, and it puts you can't prep for that. You can't, there were times where we would do challenges and they would be upset because we didn't perform in the way that they wanted us to, and or we would like not figure it out. And you can't account for stress and for, like the pressure of being in that situation. So even when they test out the games and they try it out, oh yeah, this is fine. Look, the crew all did it. Yeah, but you guys are like talking to your family and getting, a good 6 hours of sleep at night and eating 3 meals a day.
Yes.
We're not. And we're also in this like fishbowl where we feel like we're being judged and everything is being
And you are.
watched. And that kind of hypervigilance on like an awareness of like this over analyzing everything that's going on is so not helpful for anyone, for the person experience. Like it just leads, we can't even think straight. It really impacts functioning.
Yeah, we had a survivor, Kat. I mean, she's told this story, so I'm not speaking out of turn. Her name's Kathy. She was on Fantress's Favorites, and she was on Zoloft prior to going out there, and she was supposed to wean herself off, and she was like, "Fuck that." She was like, "I told production I did, but I didn't." So
super depressive and
so she enters the game, no drugs, and and so she's sitting there. So at night she's having nightmares that she's in a concentration camp, because of the shelter outline.
Right.
And so eventually she's just like, look, I can't take this. Fucking vote me out. I'm begging you. Like I am, my nights are just pure terror.
Yeah.
And so the rest of her tribe sees her. They're just like, okay, so she's not coming after me. And so if she's not coming after me, she's really not a danger to my game. I have no desire to get rid of her.
Right.
We're going to keep her. So she's sitting there. So they don't vote her out. And so the next day she's like, look, I begged you, vote me out. And they're just like, no, we're not. So she sat there with the machete and she was just like, okay, what finger can I cut off that will do the least amount of damage? That if I cut off this finger, they'll remove me from the game. So they about tackled her with the machete in her hand, ready to cut off her finger to exit the game.
Wow.
I mean, that's like breaks my heart to hear that somebody would be pushed to that kind of emotional, like breaking point in a way. Have to, because then what that does is it creates, the worst thing, the feelings about the feelings. So we have like the feeling, and then we have like, I feel trapped. I feel scared. I feel fearful. I feel like I want to get out of here. And then we have the feeling about the feeling. And that's what really messes us up when we're like, oh my God, I'm a sane person. Why am I thinking that? And then we have the guilt and the shame on top of that. And that is what really causes like the depression and the anxiety and all this stuff, is these metacognitions and the awareness of how this doesn't match your belief of who you are as a person, which is put on to the test when you're on, and the spotlight is put on when you're on a reality show. There are so many identity issues that I see of who am I? Who am I on this show? Who am I to the fans? Who am I to my friends? Who am I when people stop asking me my opinion on everything? That's, it's only on reality television where people stop and go, hey, you know what? I was noticing how, Johnny Fairplay over there, he's been sleeping in. To like, do you think he's depressed? What do you think is going on with him? So then you think that your opinion matters and you're like these things. You go out in the rest of the world and nobody gives a crap about what you say. And it's like, what happened to all the people caring? And we have this like existential crisis. And I see this play out in people's relationships. I have talked to people about this this is the rule. Not like this is the what usually happens. And I just think that this is something that the fans don't see. This is something that production doesn't see. And this is something that, in small groups, it's happening in, conversations, maybe more one-on-one, or when there is an issue or something happens. We had a cast member on our show who died of a drug overdose. And I think that, kind of made a few people start talking about things. But I think when you get a lot of cast members together, there's this feeling of connection. There's this feeling of nostalgia. There's this feeling of like, man, those times were really fun, where we again have that feeling of like the two realities can't exist, where it's either I loved it and it's all good, and like if I say anything bad about it, are they ever going to invite me back? Are they ever going to, there's like too much at stake if people were to talk about this. And so here I am.
This is so opening my mind, because when you first started talking about wanting to counsel people from reality shows, I was thinking, well, come on.
This is what everybody thinks.
And also like, well, it wouldn't have affected me that much. Like, are we sure these aren't just really dramatic people? But no, you are really opening my mind, because I don't think I would handle that. Yeah. Like you said, it's like an experiment. It's an experiment with no debrief.
Yeah. And social media afterwards. I mean, no one takes a second to write anything nice.
No,
it doesn't exist.
Right.
So you have these anonymous fucks that, I mean, like the quarantine happened. So everybody in their they're like, let me binge the challenge. Let me binge Survivor. I get messages, I don't know, every other day wishing bad things, not only upon myself, but my daughters.
Right.
They're 4 and 13.
Yeah.
And you can't say that doesn't do a little something to just plant it does something
it's disgusting.
It's disgusting. And naturally, as human beings, we're interactional. We are people who need connection, and we need social, positive social interactions. And rather than having this like smaller tribe of people who look out for us, who care for us, who really know us, we have these anonymous people who think that they know us, who think that they, who say one line to us or leave one message that, you'll remember to this day. And it's nothing to them, but it really, really affects it. Even the strongest. I think about how mentally stable I am, the amount of therapy I've done in order to go through like grad school program. Like you do a lot of your own therapy. Like I think it was like 200 hours or something like that. Like I did a lot of therapy. So you just know, and you learn like how we are, the things, the environments we're in, the interactions we have absolutely affect us. And, we have between 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day. Not all of them we're conscious of. Not all of them are right in the front. I talk to my clients and then say, it's kind of like you click on a link and it opens up a whole bunch of pop-ups in the background. And there's music and weird stuff going on in the back, but that's not what you're looking at. It's not the front screen. And maybe you can ignore it for a while. But if you're like trying to write a paper or do something else, and you got all these pop-ups back there, all these thoughts that are like, remember that time you did this and how you're and like, and you're just trying to like put your kids to bed or like read them a story. And you can't, it changes how you go about your day. It changes your view of yourself. And I think it's an important thing to talk about, an important thing to recognize. And it doesn't mean I'm like, get rid of reality television. No, just let's help them out a little bit.
Yeah. So you had to go through your own counseling before becoming a therapist. Do you ever have days where like you are not a good therapist, where you needed to do like more meditating or something before a session?
I think in the I will say, I'm kind of the person who has sacrificed my own well-being for others. It's just, I think a lot of therapists are kind of like that. And so my clients would never know it, but it would more play out in my inability to practice good self-care. So maybe I like wouldn't be, eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner that day, or I'd be like staying up and not getting a good night's sleep or something like that. But one of the things before you even start working with clients, and one of the things that I think separates therapists from, say, life coaches. So one thing I think separates like therapists from life coaches and things like that. I mean, everybody who helps people is wonderful, and I am like all about that and all for like, let's make people feel better in any way. But we do a lot of work, and I have supervisors that I work with, and I do consultations all the time about transference and countertransference. So how is the situation with your client affecting you? And the majority of the work that you do in like the first year is let's get you right. And how can you handle hearing the information that you hear? Because it's going to be a lot. And you need to develop some really good tools for how to hold this space and hold this information. I call it care without carrying. So how do I care for this person? And with everything, how do I care for somebody without carrying the emotion, the heaviness, the whatever it may be of the situation? So I have a lot of techniques that I use. I'm like, kind of like hippity dippity. So there's a lot of like crystals and sage and incense that, gets lit around here that always helps. And really it's just practicing a lot of mindfulness and staying present and in the moment. And but it took a while, and it's an ongoing thing. It's something I have to practice every single day.
I bet. Oh my gosh. Are there any patterns that you see, especially with couples?
The thing that I think I talk with couples a lot about, we often want so bad for the other person to change. We say, oh, if only they were like this, I want this person to be different. Let me tell you, I could say I could be the best therapist in the whole entire universe. I can't make anybody change. You're not going to be able to make anybody change. We can't do that. There's a running joke in therapy. How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? Well, first the light bulb has to actually want to change. And so that's like, right? So that's the whole thing. So, when working with couples, and say I'm working with the wife who's saying, I really want my husband to just be a better husband. I want him to be attentive and do the kind of things that he used to do, whatever it may be. I say, are you being the best wife you can be? And I think it's really important. Before, I was married for 5 years, and then going through grad program, I was like, oh, I'm not taking my own advice. And I can't really be like allowing myself to be in this kind of relationship and allow myself to be treated this way or have these kind of interactions, and then go and tell people, like, help couples, because I'm not doing taking any of my own advice. So through that, I realized that this is not a healthy relationship for me to be in. And, we went to couples therapy, and that was something that I really tried. I said, I'm going to be the best wife I can be. I'm going to be the wife that I, was when we first got married, and the kind of person that I would want to be that would maybe have somebody else respond to me in that way, because if we're, have this, your thoughts and your feelings and your actions are all connected. So if your thoughts are, oh my God, look at this motherfucker. He didn't even do the dishes in the sink. Are you kidding me? He's so late. I can't believe he didn't do the dishes. Doesn't he know that I did all the laundry, that I took care of all this stuff? That guy can't even put his goddamn dish in the dishwasher. It's not that hard. What feelings does that create? Guaranteed. Resentment, anger, frustration, blah, blah, blah. We can keep going. How do you act when you are frustrated, angry? How do you interact with your husband when you are frustrated, angry? You're not saying, hey, hon, do you mind doing that? You're like passive aggressive, and you're, what do I do? What do I call it? Like hate cleaning, where you're like, oh, don't clean this tree.
I am cleaning at you.
Yes.
I want you to notice.
Yeah, I'm cleaning. I'm like hate cleaning this counter. And like, we do that. And we're like,
I didn't do anything wrong.
Right. And this is all going on inside your head. And they haven't, all they did. And it could be like, oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. I was on a really busy call and I just threw it in there. And you're right. Let me handle it right now.
Yeah.
If we were to come to our partners with that understanding, or check what thought is making me rage clean, and what feelings do I have, and what thought is creating these feelings? Can I transform that thought into something that's a little more compassionate, a little more understanding? Give the benefit of the doubt as much as you can. And that is like a great place to start. And if one partner who's being the best like partner they can be, husband, wife, what have you, and you still aren't getting the things that you need, then I think it's important to like look at, what we're bringing to the table. Is this even something that person can provide. And I think getting a really solid understanding of what everybody's wants and needs are is really kind of like the starting point or some of the helpful tips for couples. Yeah.
That whole rage cleaning thing, a Brene Brown quote that changed my life was, in the absence of data, we make up stories.
Yes, we do. I love that. I love her.
I make up so many stories about what the other person is doing and why they did it. And I spin into such a rage. And almost all the time, the other person didn't even notice what they had done. So they certainly weren't doing it on purpose. They certainly weren't doing it on purpose to hurt me.
Right.
So I'm not always very good at it, but like when I'm in like the third paragraph of making up a story in my mind about why they did the thing, like, oh, can you either let this go or bring it up to them?
Yes. And it's I want to give you like all of the credit and recognition for being a creative mind, because it's only the most creative. It's the same muscle, the same thing that makes you creative. We can't turn it off. The same thing that would make you probably good at telling another story, able to host a podcast, able to come up with ideas for other things. We can't say, hey, brain, I'd really like you to be creative and give me good ideas and create all these wonderful stories over here. But can you not do it over here? But no, it doesn't work like that. So, I always use Stephen King as an example. So if Stephen King listened to the thoughts inside of his own head, oh my God, he'd be institutionalized and be like, I'm crazy. And you definitely need to I'm going nuts. We all have dark thoughts and we all have these crazy things that our mind thinks. And so he's like, oh shit, that's good. I'll write that down. If he thought that was him and his own thought, the biggest thing that I always want my clients to understand is you are not your thoughts. Your brain's job is to create thoughts and to create ideas. And it's your job to say, oh yes, thank you, brain. I'd like to keep that one.
Right.
I give the example of, how do you spell two?
TWO.
But who decided what two you were going to say? You decided. Your brain said, well, it could be TWO, TOO, or TO. Your brain has all those options.
Yeah.
Your conscious mind, your wisest self said, I would like to say this one.
Right.
Based on what you think. But we don't beat ourselves up. We don't say, oh, brain, you're so dumb for giving me TOO, TWO, and TO. All I needed was TO. No. That we do with everything else.
When I'm hanging out with kids, oh, wow, isn't it cool that there are so many options? Wow, she thinks a different thing. Isn't that cool that we have the ability to think different things? Learning about working with kids has made me so much gentler with myself.
Yeah.
So much.
And that we all have this inner child and we all have this kid inside us who's usually the one that pops up when we feel hurt, when we feel sad, when we feel fearful, and we respond from that place. So if we can tend to that little kid inside of us and be really understanding and compassionate and nurturing to that little child and say oh, it's okay. You just had a bad day. You just need let's go home and tuck into bed and watch a nice movie and get your stuffed animal out. And then let's do it again tomorrow and see if tomorrow's better. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd be overwhelmed by this too.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to do this either. You're making a good point.
Yes.
He pivots.
We need to do that to ourselves. And we need to be our own loving parents because we just do.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not upvote that enough. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, getting back to when you've got people in front of you, does a couple, you've kind of hit on this, but when a couple comes to you saying this is the problem, do you ever start seeing something else that you're like, oh no, oh, that's not the problem. This thing
it usually isn't the problem.
Okay. Yeah.
And it usually, and it's, I don't want to say it's always like this, but often the person who initiates couples therapy is like, God, we're going to go in there and that therapist is going to tell him what's up or tell her what's up and they're going to be on my side. And it is not like that.
Right.
Right? It is not. I thought it was going to be like that in therapy for me. I was like, oh, I'm going to go in there and that therapist is going to be like, fellow therapist, I'm on your side. And then she was like, oh, no, this is what you're doing. And I was like, oh, damn, that's right. And so, we like hold up a mirror, and we can really see, I think it becomes pretty easy to see how people react when they become defensive. And it's really our survival stances. So stances that we take when we feel threatened and when we feel something is at risk. And those things could be our relationships, our, like the status quo, how things are right now, and, having a partner, whatever it may be. And if we feel like that is it's like being threatened, then it is, unless we've done a lot of work to not react from a survival stance, we will absolutely respond as either the victim or the blamer or the martyr or the person who's like irrelevant, who's like, yeah, I don't care about it anyway. Like there are specific communication stances that people take, and in couples they're often matched. So you'll have a blamer and you'll have a placater, a martyr. You'll have somebody who's very rational and very logical, and then somebody who's like, well, I don't care about anything anyway, and who's like more of the like that kind of can't remember the term
like
for it
feelings
right
based.
Yeah. And so there's usually a very, and often you can see it, like the blamers do a lot of pointing. And
oh my gosh, it's literally it's in there. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, there are actual body stances for this. So I just look for, I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's what. And so sometimes I'll have a couple do like human modeling of, so I'll say, okay, you got like pretend, and this works really well with a family as well. So I'll say like, okay, show me how everybody is. Like, you guys are in a fight. Show me how everybody is. Like, let's bend their arms, put their arms how they would be, put them on the chair. And you'll often have like, the child who puts the mom or dad or whoever's the blamer on a chair, like high above everybody, and they're pointing down. And then maybe the person who's like a victim or martyr will be like on their hands and knees and like, oh, I'm so sorry, and you'll see this families will absolutely model it and show you. And you're just like, oh, I know that. There you go. That's that. And is this going on? And they're like, oh, yeah. And so we work on addressing those survival stances of how can you respond to that from a place of congruent communication, of really saying how you feel in your heart, rather from this place of feeling like attacked and you have to defend yourself, or you're doing something to just survive and try to maintain the system. Which is like, oh, maybe if I like beg, like, because that's what I did when I was growing up. And these are things that we develop early on. And I never want clients to feel bad about these survival stances, because they're survival stances. That's how you survived. Right. But it's kind of like using duct tape to fix this stuff. It works for so long. It's so great. Yeah, I love it. But after a while, you're like, oh, I should actually like fix that hole in the wall and like really like repair it rather than just patch it up. It'll be like, let me use a different tool that now I'm an adult and I have the ability to learn this new skill. And how the hell do we learn this shit anyway? We don't know. Nobody's like born knowing this stuff. We have to either see it modeled or realize that this isn't how we should be, and we need to like react differently. Or we start seeing how it affects our relationships, and the consequences become so great that we're forced to change, or somebody's like, you better go to therapy or else I'm leaving your ass. Right. And so then and then people feel so ashamed of, oh my God, but no, thank you for like, I'm so glad that you had that survival skill, because that's how you made it through maybe your abusive upbringing, or the sexual trauma that you went through, or, being in a family where nobody validated and they were real dismissive of emotions. Like, how did your family respond when you were angry? Oh, they didn't talk. Oh, they never got angry. Well, how on earth are you supposed to learn how to respond in a fight? Yeah. I could talk about this shit all day. I love it.
Absolutely. So letting people know, like, you now have a power that you didn't have when you were a child.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when you're doing family therapy, do kids pick up on more than the parents are aware that they're picking up on?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Kids are very intuitive. They definitely know when something's wrong. I think one of the things that I see in the population I work with are parents who want to hide the problems from the kids, and kids can sense that, and they say, oh, I don't want my child to ever see us in a fight or ever see us argue. That really isn't helpful for them in relationships later, because then they get the wrong idea that fights don't happen, or that happy couples shouldn't ever get in an argument. What matters is not them witnessing it. Of course, we never want them to witness any sort of violence. We don't want anything that's abusive to be something that they witness or experience. But it's okay for kids to see parents have emotions, because it teaches them how to regulate their own if there is the resolution. So it's very important that kids understand, you know what? You know how you had that bad day when you had your toy broke and you were so mad and you just wanted to like hit someone and you didn't. So you went in your room and we hit your pillow and that made you feel better. Well, mom was having one of those days too. And she was so angry. And you know, when moms get angry, sometimes we say things that's the wrong thing, but mom is working on that. And like, what helps you when you get angry? Oh, taking some deep breaths. I'm going to try that too. Let's practice that. And then, you know, like, I just want you to know that I love dad. And in the same way that you still love your brother, even though you got really mad at him when he broke your toy, and we always love you. And this had nothing to do with you, but we're going to be okay. And we're just going to get angry and we're going to hit our pillow and then we'll be fine. And then we're going to be okay. And dad and I are going to be friends again. And them seeing the resolution and how people manage emotions is, magic, wonderful. It's the thing that really matters.
Well, and it's building a bridge to things that they've experienced. Like, what do you do when you're angry? Don't you feel this way when you're angry? And it's something I have ADHD and I wasn't diagnosed until my 20s.
It's the best. No, the best when you get the diagnosis. The worst to have it. But I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Yes. And lights and darks to it, positives and negatives.
Correct.
I so need things to be explicit. I hate implicit stuff. I hate guess culture. I hate having to guess what someone wants or what they meant. And so what I saw you doing with that example was making it explicit for the kid. This is what was this is what you saw and heard. This is what was underneath and what it meant, and bridging it to their behavior. Great. It's like a triple learning experience.
And if you are the parent who was experiencing anger and you can do that, guaranteed it's going to take that all. Like, when we can teach it, it really has a magical effect on us, like practicing it and applying it. And, you know, it's wonderful when I get the opportunity to work with people who are parents, because often we are very bad at taking care of ourselves, or like, you know, understanding why we like, oh no, I mean, I don't need to take care of myself, or I can go a few hours without eating, or I can, like, you know, stay up late and get the work done. But we would never do that for our children. So I love having people who are parents come like, would you let your kid? No, never. So why are we doing that for you? And then they can be like, oh, dang, you're right. So, you know, it's helpful.
Adults need what children need. We need clear expectations and snacks and breaks.
Absolutely. And occasional nap. Yes. And to be told that we love you just the way you are, and you can be silly and goofy and you could be just you. Just you. Yeah. It all ties together, because, you know, all the reality stuff is like, we want you to be this version of you. And then people are like, what? That's not. So it's all a lot about, like, who is the person really, and how can I nurture that person and help people love themselves. Self-compassion and self-love is the best thing in the whole world, and what we should all be aiming for. Like, just think that you're the shit. Best self
that you could be if the armor was down, the defensiveness, the need to win or the need to placate, the fear of abandonment, if all that shit was gone, like, what would your gemstone in the middle be?
Yes. Yeah. I love it.
Good stuff. Well, this has been wonderful. I feel like I could hear you talk about mental health for hours. Thank you for hopping on with Johnny and I.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me and reaching out. Like, this stuff like lights me up and I get so excited to talk about it. So yeah, anytime. And if people are interested, I work at a practice called Solutions OC, and you can check me out at solutionsoc.com. And my podcast is the Brain Candy Podcast, and I am on all social medias as I'm Sarah Rice, letter I, letter M.
Very nice. We'll make sure those are in the show notes. We also ask every guest to pick a charity that they'd like our listeners to support, and also a call to action, something that a step people can take to make their lives better. I like very simple steps. Some people like very ambitious steps. It's up to you. So call to action and Charity, what you got?
Well, my call to action, and it's a real simple one, but is it powerful?
Okay.
Grounding. So get outside with your shoes off. That's a big, important one. And just spend, I won't even make it hard, 1 minute.
1 minute.
Standing on the grass or the dirt. Doesn't matter. Just needs to be you connecting to the earth. We are electrical creatures. The earth has like electrical, it actually grounding, the word, like electrical grounding. There are so many amazing positive benefits to this. A reduction in like cortisol levels, stress goes down, inflammation goes down. This is heavily researched and totally science. I'm not like, I'm like a hippy dippy gal, but this is like science for you. So just get outside and, if you're feeling like extra credit, hug a tree. Okay, I like that too. And the organization that I work with, that I've been working with since I first appeared on reality television, is called PAVE, Promoting Awareness and Victim Empowerment. And they are a wonderful, wonderful grassroots nonprofit organization that supports victims of sexual abuse and I should say survivors of sexual abuse. And they have been very active in supporting so many people in the Me Too movement, and are a great resource and really great to connect with if you are somebody who has experienced sexual assault, or if you know somebody and are looking for ways to help or resources for them, then you can check out PAVE, and there are wonderful, wonderful resources there.
Oh my gosh, those are terrific. So everybody go to PAVE, and that'll be in the show notes, and go outside and put your bare feet on the grass for just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute, get some grounding. Well, we'll make sure all of that is in the show notes, and tag me and Johnny and Sarah when you've taken your step or given to the charity. We would love to see what you're doing.
Oh my God, I would love that. There's nothing that makes me happier than people are like, oh my gosh, it really was nice and it made me feel so much better. I love that shit. I live for it.
Sweet. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for hopping on with us. We had a great time talking to you.
Thank
and
you.
Johnny had to get ready for DJing, but he's going to pop back to end the broadcast. So I think just leave your camera or leave yourself, and he'll I'm going to put a Post-it note on my camera, and I think he'll figure it out from there. I don't know.
Okay.
Should be fine.
Yeah.
Our part is done. Now it's on Johnny.
You want me to just swipe that camera thing and just leave it open, or what?
Just
You're good.
Oh, there he is.
Right.
Good timing.
Figure it out.
Yes.
Just
Password.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I had to duck out. We had a
calls.
previous time, and then life interfered, as it tends to every now and then. So, but thank you so much, Kendall.
Thank you.
The ball was in your court, and I got to watch your dribbling, and you're an all-star.
That's
so,
great. I love sports.
It's sports ball. That's her favorite thing.
Go sports.
No sports. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Don't forget that call to action. Donate and be a better person. Yeah. There we go. And with that,
Love yourself.
Sounds good.
See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.